So here's something I thought was interesting as I'm stripping these down, sandblasted the edges, and I'm just grinding off the paint because I don't like sandblasting flat surfaces. It's almost quicker and it's definitely less, well, it's still a little bit messy. Shit goes everywhere. But in this, I noticed something that I thought you might find interesting as the paint's coming off. So you can look where I sandblasted, and that's very clean. And over here, the paint, as you get through, so the top layer had all these pits in it. And it looked to me like they were from the top down. So as I went through the red, and then you see some primer, and then below the primer, where it had the little pits in top, it's just starting to surface rust down through there. And it's very lightly on the surface. Can you see if I grind or sand just a little more? So what it looks like, I mean, this was old paint, but what it looks like is the paint degraded, UV degradation and all that stuff, and it just started chipping out. It's almost like it was sandblasted, had pits in it, but it also shows you that primer underneath is not waterproof. Unless you get into some of those two-part urethanes and epoxies. I'm guessing this was probably old lacquer stuff, and it definitely, you can see that. I know here in Ohio, years ago, I had talked, I'm gonna open this door and let it clear out a little bit of fumes. It's hard to see in the sunlight. But years ago, so I'm originally from Arkansas, Texas, been down south, had rust-free cars to work with. And I got up here, sanded one, put some primer on it, and then a month later, I noticed, while I just let it sit and was doing other things, it started, it looked like sand on it, real light sand. So I grind some down and there was rust. I sanded this thing to bare shiny metal. I didn't know what was going on. So, this was, 15 years ago. So I got a hold, I was actually talking to one of the chemists at PPG, and I kind of had some phone numbers. At one point, I'd actually ended up with PPG as a sponsor for a race team out here at Mid-Atlantic Series in Lexington, Ohio. And I don't know, painter quit, they needed somebody, I jumped in. So I kind of had an in, I had a phone number. And nice thing about it is I had access to lots of paint. But anyway, back to this. I was talking to this chemist and he said that in the salt belt, and this was the only place they saw it, if you sanded a car, you had, it's hard to remember, I said this years ago. He said there was some reaction of the salt and the rust created something new, and it would sit in those pockets. And microscopic, where you can sand it with 80 grit and it's shiny as hell, but then you have what I saw later. So he said, you need to, if you've got some that's got the pits in it, if you see pits on the surface, then it's probably in. If you've got a body that has good paint on it already, like, if you were to look, this is all black. If you were to look at this and there's no pits or anything in it, the metal is probably good under it. This over here, let me flip this fender over and we'll take a look at it. I haven't even looked at it yet. Hold on, guys, set the phone down. Okay, back. If you look at this one, you don't see pits or anything in it, other than scratches. And so then when you go up here to where I've sanded and stuff, you don't see any of that pitting. There was a rust spot here or something like, but under good paint that had a good surface on it, you don't really see that. Over here, you can definitely tell that the surface, I should have taken a good picture beforehand, but you can definitely see what I'm talking about. So what he says, you have to kill that. One thing that I found that's what I started doing back then. If I run into an issue like this, it was called Piclex 20. And what that was for, story I got, I used to spray it on steel that was being shipped across the ocean, and it would protect it. I have actually taken, well, if you go back and look, you may see it. This rear fender on the Trans Am, someone had stripped it 10 years ago, so it had all kinds of little rust pits in it. And I took that, scuffed it real quick, sprayed it with the Piclex, and just leave it. And I've been doing this for 15 years using the Piclex stuff. So you could actually sandblast the body, spray that stuff on if you think you're not going to get to it for a while, and then there's no issue with it. It dries. You come back, you hit it with frickin' 80, 180, whatever, and wipe it off, and you can spray. It's like it kills the rust, has no bonding issues because it's a water thing. But it's a little bit acidic. You can definitely taste it. So that's just something I noticed on this fender. Everything else was good, but it's a good tip if you're around Ohio, around the Salt Belt. He said the issue's not anywhere else unless you've got one. It's just, y'all know what I'm talking about. It's totally crapped out and got rust pits and things in it. But wanted to show you that, and the stuff's available anywhere. Works really good. So I will get back to sanding. Okay, here we are again. Just finished sanding. I'm going to show you the difference in the clean stuff, and then you can still see that, just that slight pitting. It's only on top. Here on the side, you don't see anything. The metal is real clean, right? But if you go and look here, yeah, it's dark. Hang on a second. Sorry about that. And if you look here, oh, it's hard to get in there. You can still see some pitting with some rust in there. So I'm going to spray this whole top side with this stuff. And this is all that it is. Like I said, it don't take much at all. Well, if it'll spray. It don't take much. And you'll see right there where it's hidden. You just wipe it. Leave a little wet surface on it. And you don't want a lot of buildup. You just basically want it in those pits. So wipe her down, and that's it. I'll let that sit, work on the other fender. Stuff will be dry in 30 minutes, and then I can do some epoxy. Usually the way it works out for me is by the time I plan on doing it today, but something will happen, and then I guess you got to feed yourself at some point. So it'll probably end up being tomorrow. And like I said, the other fender doesn't look bad, but this one, and if you'll look, now you can actually see a lot more of it. It's like it kind of turns it black in there. And I know people have used navel jellies and all kinds of things. I've never used it. This worked. I've used it forever. So hopefully you can use that tip.